Joining us now to speak a little bit more about this is Lucky Ntimane, spokesperson of the National Liquor Traders Council. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Ntimane. Let's just first start with what's happened, the latest incident in the Eastern Cape. Kwenga Kashani was celebrating her 15th birthday at this tavern. First of all, I think for me, that's what really grabbed my attention, a 15-year-old celebrating her birthday at a tavern, but she eventually died with two others who were aged, we understand, all three between the ages of 15 and 20. What was your response when you saw this?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. But firstly, allow me to send our heartfelt condolences to those three ladies that lost their lives in that tavern, a wholly preventable death, but also extend our condolences to those that lost their lives in the Bosbeck, that fire incident. As we have also often said, that we see ourselves as a part of society before we're business people, so we are concerned about these deaths. It is very concerning that yet once again, we should mention a 15-year-old and a tavern in one sentence. This should not have happened. I mean, if the 15-year-old had made arrangement to spend the birthday at a tavern, it means that the tavern owner was aware that someone at a certain age was going to come into their establishment. And yet the tavern owner, in his greed, in his disregard for humanity, allowed this to happen, allowed the 15-year-old to come into his establishment without even providing necessary safety measures to ensure that whoever comes to their taverns is safe. Now we have to mourn the loss of innocent lives, which should not have happened in the first instance.
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned in the introduction to the previous report by my colleague, was that officials there see part of the problem as the inability of owners to capacitate patrons. Can you just break that down for me in simple English? First of all, as you mentioned, we shouldn't be speaking about a 15-year-old and a tavern in one sentence. So in that situation, how do you capacitate such a patron? What are we speaking about here?
I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the Eastern Cape Liquor Board for their swift action in ensuring that action is being taken within a period of 24 hours, and that outlet, as we understand, has now been shut down, and we hope that that outlet never opens again, and that those that operate similar to this outlet also face the same fate. For us, it's simple. The license conditions are very clear in terms of what is allowed and what is not allowed. Underage, it's not allowed. People below the age of 18 are not allowed at a tavern for anything, even if it is to buy cold drink. They are not allowed to step inside a tavern, period. But also, the tavern owner has the power to ensure that people that are coming to their establishment are of the right drinking age. In fact, if he has a reasonable apprehension that a person coming into their establishment might not be of the right age, then he should demand for an identification, which in this instance obviously didn't happen. So tavern owners ought to take full responsibility of what happens in the establishment, but also the issue of security. We have seen the issue of tavern shootings that have happened in the past few months. We know that tavern owners cannot necessarily prevent people from coming with AK-47s in their establishment, but they can deter those incidents from happening. They can install cameras, they can hire bouncers, they can have eyes and ears on the ground to ensure that patrons that are coming into their place are in an environment that is safe and secure, and they can enjoy themselves without having to worry about security. Now, tavern owners ought to change the way they do things. People are only going to consider going to a tavern where they know that they're going to be safe. The new word for tavern going forward is security.
As you say, you laud the Eastern Cape Liquor Board for their swift action. They say they periodically hold raids at these taverns. Do you think they are often enough if the Eastern Cape is still bedeviled with the problem of underage drinking at these establishments?
I think we work very closely with the Eastern Cape Liquor Board as well as the provincial South African police services in that province. I know that much can be done, but we know that there are restrictions and constraints with regards to the inspectors that we have on the ground. But we commend that the swiftness in which the Eastern Cape Liquor Board continues to employ on the ground to ensure that tavern owners or taverns themselves are actually of the right space to be able to sell alcohol in a responsible manner, which is something that we both advocate with the Eastern Cape Liquor Board. So be that as it may, more can still be done, but it is a work not only for the liquor board, but also for us as liquor traders, for us as taverners to take full responsibility, but also for communities and society, to shun away from conduct that support the issue of underage drinking. I mean, question could be asked, where were the parents of the 15-year-old if the 15-year-old could actually decide that I want to spend my birthday at the tavern? So more needs to be done. We have underlying issues, I think, that give rise to underage drinking. There was a report, that was issued for the alcohol industry that mentioned that 13 and 14-year-olds are the ones that first experiment with alcohol. So we need to understand this at the root cause as to why is it that causes the 13 and 14-year-old to want to experiment with alcohol, because alcohol cannot be a form of entertainment for our kids. There should be other things that they should be concerned with and not alcohol. Then we need to call that out.
As you say, the whole value chain must be involved if we're looking at society as a whole. But if we talk about the criminal justice system, so if the tavern owners are not compliant, they have to be held accountable by someone. And I'm wondering about law enforcement officers. According to the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, I mean, their regulations say, for instance, that there must be law and order where communities deal with inconsiderate liquor trading, noise levels, selling of liquor to underage children. Are law enforcement officials ensuring that there is compliance? As in, when these are reported to them, do they take action?
So there is a strong partnership between ourselves and SABC as well as the Eastern Cape Liquor Board in this instance. But I think for us, we have enough laws in the country that could be able to give us, I think, a strong starting point to be able to arrest some of these issues that we are dealing with now. It's not just the Eastern Cape. I think for us, the starting point should be to look at the liquor laws themselves. We have 9 different liquor laws in one country. Each and every province has got its own liquor law. And yet, when we deal with the issue of alcohol abuse and irresponsible usage thereof, we are now having to segment where the issues are, which is not fair. We need to have one liquor law so that we can have, as a country, an alcohol abuse strategy that will enable us to look at the root causes of what gives rise to, some of the instances that we see: drinking and driving, underage drinking, pregnant women drinking alcohol, and people that consume beyond their limits. So we need to be able to understand this. I think at a country level, it does not help that we are having to deal with this at a provincial level. Be that as it may, I think the law enforcement are doing their job, but more can be done. And it is us, communities and society, that actually should work together, work very closely with SABC. I can bet that, this tavern, it was not the first time that they've been allowing underage to come into the establishment. But community and society, we stood by and we probably kept silent. We didn't report this. And now that, there is a death, then we have to open our mouth. It is unfair. We need to support each other. We need to go back to the African adage that says, a child belongs to the village, and the village needs to take care of that child. We cannot allow a situation where our children do as they please, whereas we are there as parents. I'm a parent myself. We need to be able to act and support our kids.
Then speak to me as a parent. What should communities do, especially given the fact that we live in a democracy and, the community discipline that used to apply, let's say, a good 30 years ago is definitely not the same now. There are children's rights. Children know them very well, and not just any community member can try and discipline a child. So it's no longer like that. You mentioned the fact that children start drinking early. Alcohol is seen as a gateway drug. We understand, according to Operation Valagonge, some of the shebeens that were shut down where liquor was confiscated, that drugs was also being sold there. How do we tackle this problem?
There is an African proverb that says that a child would burn himself to get the adhesion of the public. And we thought that Enyobeni was that moment where we could see that our children needed help, needed our support, needed our guidance for them to stay away from these instances where their lives would be at risk, where they would experiment with alcohol and other drugs. So the issue now in Eastland and what we're dealing with means that we are not yet taking that responsibility as communities, as society, to be able to address the issues that plunge our kids into these environments where they feel that they can go into a tavern to have a nice time, to have a nice life, to be good, to feel good about themselves, and as an escape mechanism for them, to be seen to be having arrived and to be seen to be cool with their friends. We need to be able to call out, those parents that are neglecting their responsibility. I know that nowadays in society people mind their own business, but I think maybe we need to go back to the old days. I think the old school was the best way for us to be disciplined. As I was growing up, I could not even set foot near a tavern. In fact, I had to stay far away from anyone who was drinking alcohol. Maybe we need to bring back, that era. And maybe that is the era that is going to save us. Democracy does not save us from death. We are now having this interview because 3 kids lost their lives unnecessarily because of the democracy. People felt that, they could go wherever they want because, it's a democracy, but it doesn't help. It doesn't protect us. We need to be able to live our lives in a way.
Just a final word to our viewers. We are going into the final hours of 2022. People tend to want to go out with a bang and enter into the new year in a similar fashion, and a lot of that does involve alcohol. What words would you like to say to those who will be out and about celebrating New Year's?
To our liquor traders, I would like to say this. Let us put the needs of our people first and not the profits. And to our consumers, to the revelers, is to say, what is important is that we see 2023 in flesh and not in a coffin. Let us drink responsibly. Let us not get behind the wheel when we have had something to consume. But also, alcohol is not the only form of entertainment. Let us stay safe. Let us be there for our families. Let us have a nice time as we enter into 2023. And let us be safe and be alive in 2023.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Much appreciated, and wishing you a great entry to the new year yourself. Lucky Ntimane is a spokesperson for the National Liquor Traders Council.